This is page 3 for graphing rational functions. And what we're doing here is finding horizontal asymptotes of a rational function that is not in transformational form. So to do this, what we're actually going to be doing is comparing the degrees. So compare the degree of the numerator to the degree of the denominator. The first possibility when we compare degrees is that it's going to be top-heavy. So an example of what this looks like is y equals x cubed plus 1 over 2x minus 3. So I'm going to compare the degrees of the numerator and the denominator. The degree of the numerator is a 3. The degree of the denominator, even though it's not listed, is going to be a 1. Because 3 is bigger than 1, it's considered to be top-heavy. When this happens, there is no horizontal asymptote. So if they ask you what's the horizontal asymptote, you're going to say none. Second possibility is that it's going to be bottom-heavy. So this could be, for example, y equals 2x minus 5 over 4 minus x squared. So when you're looking at this example, you might be thinking it's the 4 on the denominator that makes this bottom heavy, and you're wrong. You really want to focus on the terms, not just what's first. So the degree in the numerator comes from this 2x, so the degree is going to be a 1. The degree of the denominator is going to come from the x squared term, so the degree in the denominator is 2. Because 2 is greater than 1, it's bottom heavy. When this happens, you're going to have a 0 horizontal asymptote, or 0 asymptote. This is not the same thing as saying that you have no horizontal asymptote. When they ask you what is the horizontal asymptote, you're going to say y equals 0. There is one, it's just located at y equals 0. Third possibility is that it's not top heavy, it's not bottom heavy, the degrees are the same. So, for example, we have y equals x minus 5 all over 4x minus 2. When this happens, you're going to find your horizontal asymptote by using a ratio. And the ratio comes from what's in front of those leading coefficients. So since it's an x and a 4x, those are the big terms, the terms with the highest degree. We're going to use those to come up with our ratio. So the numbers in front of them give us the horizontal asymptote. There is no number in front of the x, so when that happens, we use a 1 in its place. Since there's a 4 in front of the x in the denominator, that gives us the number that we put in the denominator for this ratio. So the horizontal asymptote for the third example is y equals 1/4. Now this may seem like a lot of information to have to remember, so we have a little picture to the right to help you remember all this relationship. So we have T, N, B, Z, S, R. To help you remember, 2 naughty boy zookeepers stole rabbits. Shame on them. So let's look at some examples. For the first example, we want to focus on comparing the degrees to find the horizontal asymptotes. So if I look at the top, I look at the bottom, the degrees are the same. Because the degrees are the same, we're going to use a ratio to find the horizontal asymptote. So looking at the numbers we have in front, it's 1. The horizontal asymptote is going to be 1 over 1, which is just 1. To get the vertical asymptote, we're going to have to factor the denominator. X squared minus 4 is the difference of 2 perfect squares. So when you factor this, we're going to have x minus 2 and an x plus 2. To actually find the equations, I'm going to set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve for x. All right, did that pretty quickly. Hopefully you guys kept up. So the vertical asymptotes are going to be x equals 2 and x equals negative 2. Looking at number 2, we're going to start by comparing the degrees. So is it top heavy, bottom heavy, or are the degrees the same? Hopefully you guys recognize that the degrees are the same. So that means we're going to have a ratio for our horizontal asymptote. So I'm going to look at those numbers in front of the terms that gave us the same degree. So the 2 and the 3 give us the 2/3 gives us the horizontal asymptote. Now to find the Vertical asymptote, I have to take the denominator and determine what makes this denominator equal to 0. So I'm going to set it equal to 0 and solve for x. So I subtract 5 first. Now I'm going to divide by the 3. So I get a negative 5/3 for the vertical asymptote. Looking at the third example, to find the horizontal asymptote, you want to ask yourself, is this top heavy, bottom heavy, or the degrees the same? Hopefully you guys recognize that this will be bottom heavy. So because it's bottom heavy, we're going to have a horizontal asymptote and y equals 0. So take a moment right now, because we're going to have to figure out what the vertical asymptote is. So take a moment, pause this if you need to factor the denominator. Hopefully you're just now unpausing it and you're figuring out that when you factor the denominator, you're going to have x plus 4 and x plus 2. So I'm going to quickly set those equal to 0 to find the vertical asymptotes. I would like to think that you guys are ready now to do example 4 on your own. So please take a moment, pause it, do this problem on your own. When you're ready, unpause it, and we'll compare answers. Hopefully you guys got the same answer as me. It's top heavy, so there's no HA. Since the denominator is x squared, the vertical asymptote is going to be x. So at this point, hopefully you guys are ready to complete the last page on your own. So please get those completed for next class. And I also recommend completing the summary and adding any questions in as part of your notes.